It's 21 for a reason.
Youth that use alcohol are more likely to engage in other risky behaviors, such as gambling. Learn the warning signs and how to talk to your children about addiction.
It's 21 for a reason. Brought to you by CIRAC and funded in partnership with SAMHSA. Find out more at CIRACCT.org.
Hi, Miranda Mahoney here from Grizzle Pride, your local drug prevention coalition. So, marijuana, now legal in Connecticut, but there are some things you really should know. It's only legal for people 21 and older. And always secure your cannabis products like edibles, vape pens, dabs, and of course marijuana in a locking storage container and keep it out of sight and of reach of kids. Kids don't know the difference between a THC edible gummy and a candy gummy you might buy at a store. There's many resources available at grizzlepride.org or our Facebook and Instagram pages. And parents, you are your child's greatest influence. Talk early, talk often about the risks of substance use on their developing brains. Check out grizzlepride.org. grizzlepride.org. grizzlepride.org.
Hi, this is Lisa Griffin of Eastern Connecticut Savings Bank. Well, some banks offer checking account rewards, and some banks rebate ATM withdrawal fees. At Eastern, we say, why choose? Check out our Kasasa checking accounts and find out how you can get both. For more information, visit bankeasternct.com, call us at 860-889-7381, or stop by any of our branch locations today. Eastern Connecticut Savings Bank with offices in Norwich, Jewett City, and Plainfield. Member FDIC. Do you, Kasasa?
Hi, my name is Dr. Katina Simmons. I'm the optometrist and the new owner of Grizzled Eye Care, formerly the office of Dr. Joel Zuckerbrand. I would like to welcome you and your family to make an appointment today for an eye exam. Even though the name has changed, we are still providing the same family-friendly eye care as Dr. Z. We are located at 8 North Main Street in Jewett City. You can also find Grizzled Eye Care on Facebook and send us a message. Don't forget that eye exams correlate to your whole body health too. It's not just new glasses and contacts. So come see me, Dr. Katina Simmons, at the all-new Grizzled Eye Care, formerly Dr. Zuckerbrand. Hope to see you soon.
There are two types of traffic control devices that require drivers to come to a complete stop before proceeding forward: red lights and stop signs. According to statistics published by the National Highways Traffic Safety Administration, an average of 2 people die each day in the United States in automobile collisions caused by someone running a red light, and over 120,000 are injured. 45% of all crashes occur at intersections where someone often has a stop sign or red light and fails to stop and or yield the right of way after stopping. When the driver fails to stop for a traffic control device, the results can be deadly, particularly if they are rushing to beat a yellow light. Failing to stop constitutes negligence on the part of the vehicle operator. The following has been brought to you by Crystal Health and Safety.
Live from Main Street, your community radio.
Mike Minarski and Rich Waslick in the morning, and 80s all day and night.
SNSN.
Your community radio.
Live from Main Street.
Mike Minarski and Rich Waslick in the morning, and 80s all day and night.
SNSN.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome on in here at SNSN on a beautiful Thursday morning. It's beautiful and sunshiny outside. Hopefully it'll stay like that all day, considering yesterday was a complete washout. And I mean that in reality. It was one hell of a washout. I had to drive up and down the highway yesterday quite a ways in the rain. And it was awful. I can't really see great at night anyway. So when there's not many street lights up on the highway and it's pouring, and it's not very, very good for me. But I made it, and here we are. We are back. So we are waiting on our guest. We have a guest coming in this morning. His name is Michael Mish, and he is a mortgage broker. Here in the state of Connecticut. And I guess, he has a license in many, many states, but he's going to be here. And we're going to talk about, what are the state of mortgages right now? I mean, where are the rates going? Are they going to come down anytime soon? Are they going to continue to move up? Mike should have the answers to that. So also what's going to happen, or what he thinks is going to happen with the real estate market. He's been in the business for quite some time, so we'll be able to talk to him about these questions in a little bit. And since it is the first day of December, it's now officially Christmas season, and well, already was, but now we only have 1 month left to go to 2022. So I don't know about you, but 2022 for me has been very good. And I mean that from a personal standpoint. And I'm kind of wondering, has it been that way for you or your friends or your family? I've had so many different things that have happened in 2022, which is right off the end of the pandemic. So once that ended, everything things seemed to turn around quite a bit. That's the hot seat. You should see what you look like on the camera. You got 3 huge Christmas stockings behind you. Well, you can't see them from where you are. Oh. Hey, why don't you come on over and sit over here, right with a microphone? There it is. So yeah, so 2022 has been a pretty good year for moi. Right, and I gotta say, here we want to come up with talking to the night. Hold on, let me fix this. There we go. Can you here? Let me get a check on you.
Hello.
Say it again.
Hello.
Okay, I think we got you.
All
right. So anyway, we're just talking about how 2022, Mike, has been a pretty good year for me as when it comes to like just things that happen after the pandemic and everything. How about you personally? I mean, how's 2022 been for you? 2022.
Great. I mean, ever since the pandemic in 2021 hit, in 2020, real estate took off, the mortgage business took off. I mean, business is always going to have its ups and downs.
Yeah.
I don't look at time periods or years really in terms of business.
Mm-hmm.
I think obviously business, making a living, those things are important.
Yeah.
There's many other things that are a lot more important. I have 2 small kids that are both healthy and happy. So every year that stays that way is a good year.
Yeah. Well, that's
how I look at things.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with it too, because like for us, my grandson was born this year.
Yep.
My son just got engaged to his longtime girlfriend. That just happened last week. That was we knew it was coming, but it was finally he did it. And well, we got a house. We got a mortgage. Gee,
there you go.
You may know something about that. but I mean, really, as a whole, 2022 has been pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, 2020 sucked. 2021 sucked even more. And here we are. And now we're going to go into 2023. So with that being said, so give us an idea what happened with the real estate market in 2020. First of all, let's talk about like this is Michael Mish. He's with Norcom Mortgage. Where your office is in Mystic?
Yes, on Greenmanville Ave, right next to the Mystic Seaport.
Okay, and how long have you been in the business?
I got in the business in 2005, 2006. So I was getting into it as the tail end of the big crash in 06, 07. I was out of it for about 3 or 4 years, from 15 to end of 18. Mm-hmm. Then I got back in 19. So I got in back in a year before the pandemic. And the market was okay in 19.
Yeah.
But then once obviously the pandemic hit, then it kind of really took off. So I've had 3, 2.5, 3 awesome years. I was at Eastern Connecticut Savings Bank prior to this.
Yep. I was going to say a review where you're, because I know you were with the Eastern Connecticut Savings Bank.
Yeah. Yep. Had a good 2.5 years or so there. And then I had an opportunity here to open an office in Mystic.
With Norcom.
Yep.
Yep.
We're going to be opening one shortly in Westerly as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, expanding, but there's a lot of contraction in the mortgage business right now.
What do you mean?
Well, you can look at different reports and things like that. For instance, 2021, there was about, I don't know the exact number, but it was around 4.2 to 4.4 trillion dollars in mortgages written in 2021. Some reports say 2023, you're looking at 1.2 to 1.4.
So a quarter of that.
60, 70% drop in business. Yeah. So you have a lot of companies that overexpanded or grew just to kind of hire and stuff are starting to shrink. You're seeing, an older loan officer maybe getting out of the business because it could be a rough couple of years. There's a lot of people that have some unease about where the business is going. I'm happy. I'm bullish about it because when the internet companies and the fly-by-nights kind of go by, when the market does get a little bit more difficult or people.
What do you mean fly-by-nights?
People that just got into it, got quick. They were just doing refinances. And
you're talking about people or companies?
People and companies.
Okay. All
yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of consolidation. There's probably, I think, 2 or 3 of the top 50 mortgage companies in the last couple of years that have either gotten bought or closed down in the last 2 to 3 months. So,
like who? Can you name one? Or
Finance of America? I think they were 33rd in the country. Loan Depot just laid off 5,500 operations people. Guaranteed rate.
To me, that seemed like a fast food kind of loan operation.
Yeah. That was
Rocket Mortgage is another one.
Rocket. Their volume is down dramatically.
And that's Quicken, right?
Quicken, yeah. Yep. Quicken owns Rocket. So it's those places that business model of kind of the internet and you click 3 buttons and you have your mortgage. Yeah. That was I find it to be a fad. Like a lot of things, technology was kind of taking over for years, and people are now starting to go back to, local real estate, local mortgage people that can be an advisor as the market's changing. It was easy when the market was just going up constantly and the money was flowing and now the Fed has tightened their belt and the economy's tightening back, and you really need somebody that can give you some honest advice. I mean, people say all the time, is now a good time to buy? And it's like, that's such a loaded question. Depending on where you live in the United States, what's your 1 to 3 year plan? What's your 5 to 10 year plan? And that all goes into how you structure what you're going to be buying. The type of loan program you do. So,
yeah, I mean, like for example, when we bought just recently, we got a great price on a home from some folks that were looking to sell. Yeah. We actually 2 years ago we actually figured out how we were going to do this, and it was great. I mean, it worked out good. It worked out good for them. They're out of the house. They don't have to worry about it anymore. We have it now. So we bought the house. Now, we didn't buy it so much as an investment.
Yeah.
We bought it because we want to live there.
You need a place to live.
Right. So like you talk about like the 5 to 10 year plan. Yep. See, we're kind of on the 5 to 10 year plan because the way we look at it is Melissa has one daughter out already. She has another one where she's got 1 foot out the door already. She's about to graduate from UConn. And she has a boyfriend and a job. And so she comes home like midnight, leaves at 7 a.m. I mean, she's never there. And then there's Cameron, who is, he's 18, just got himself his first full-time job. So he's going to start gravitating out that way. So, I figure he'll be like stepbrothers. He'll be there till he's 35. What the heck? He's got a place to go. Then there's my daughter, Rihanna, who's the youngest, who is only 15. So we're looking 5 to 10 years. So,
right.
Mike, this is all wrapping up to a question.
Yep.
So the way the mortgage rates are right now, they've gone way up. Are they stable at this point, or do you see them going to go? They're going to go higher. And when do you think that they're actually going to start to maybe gravitate down? If you can even answer that question.
I can. So the reason rates went down, just to give you a little background, the reason why rates
Take
went
all
down.
the time. We want to know.
Yeah. The reason why rates went down initially in 2020 is because of the pandemic. The government needed to step in, or so they thought, to take care of quantitative easing, which is where the Fed steps in and buys mortgage-backed securities. Mortgage rates are derived from the sale of mortgage-backed securities on the secondary market. That's what generates them. So when people hear the Fed rate, the Fed meets every couple months or every month, depending on how many times a year they meet, and that rate goes up. That doesn't have a direct effect per se on a 30-year fixed mortgage. It's more on lines of credit, other things that people borrow. But there
revolving
is some
credit.
Right. There is some correlation between the two. But the sale of mortgage-backed securities on the secondary market to like pension funds and retirement accounts and different things that are backed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, those are generally what creates mortgage rates. So they did a whole bunch of quantitative easing. The Fed stepped in and just to give you an idea, say there was $30 billion a month in mortgage bonds. The Fed stepped in and was buying $30 billion. So that creates low supply. There's still demand. So it pushes rates down because rates work opposite of yields and bond prices. Fast forward. I think the Fed let that quantitative easing go on for about a year too long, which is why we're dealing with inflation when they said, a lot of those different things.
It seems like no matter what comes, goes.
Right.
And what goes, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
It's all cyclical. But anyway, go ahead.
And the fact that it's a shock to people in the government that by printing $4 trillion, there was going to be some type of inflation. So the market got overheated. So the Fed stepped in and said, all right, now we have to do quantitative tightening. What that means is they start selling those mortgage-backed securities that they'd bought during the pandemic on the market. What does that do? Well, if it's a $30 billion a month mortgage bond market, let's per se, and the market is buying 30 billion. Well, if the Fed comes in and starts dumping 25 or 30 billion a month, oversupply, not as much demand, bond prices go down, yields go up, rates go up. So that in essence is what caused that kind of quick jump from March of last year, right around the time when they started to go up. January, February rates were still 30-year fixed were still in the high twos, low threes, depending on the term.
And we're talking 2021,
2022.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Within a 60 to 90 day period, or a little bit more than that, they doubled, and they had gotten up close to like the mid sevens. Now they've kind of gotten back down to mid sixes to low sixes, depending on credit and down payment and program and all those different things. But that's where I really kind of see them in the short term. They're starting to come down. It looks like inflation is starting to come down a little bit. And inflation is really what drives the bond markets as well, because inflation makes your money worth less. And if you have a fixed asset price, like a bond, over time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, inflation erodes the value of that bond and that mortgage-backed security, you should say.
So real, like I said, it's cyclical. It goes around and round and round. Now, so you see them starting to gravitate down, or do we still see an effect on the printing of $4 billion?
No, $4 trillion. I see
a little difference there.
Yeah, I see them starting to trend down. The chief economist for the Mortgage Bankers Association, who was pretty much been spot on with all of his estimates and calculations the last 2 to 3 years, said that by the end of 2023, you're probably going to see rates back in the high fours, low fives. When rates started to go up, I was one of the, like when I would have conversations with people, I thought rates obviously couldn't stay as low as they were, but a comfortable range for rates to not shock the market and not freak people out was if they stayed in that 5 to 5.5 range. It's kind of like a healthy range, I think. Obviously, everybody wants a 1 or 2% interest rate, but it's not realistic.
So you say 5.5 is healthy,
and I think that's where we'll get back to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't think we're going to get down to the 2s?
Not
anytime soon.
Not unless they come out with another pandemic. Something else to.
Oh, they're getting on that. I'm telling you, they're probably getting on that.
Yeah, the conspiracy theory would say they're probably percolating something somewhere.
It's not monkeypox anymore. It's mpox.
Yeah.
You We can't say monkeypox due to racial slurring.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I read an article the other day. They said they just discovered some ancient zombie virus that has been frozen in the Siberian tundra for 50,000 years, and they're going to try to put it into a lab and see what they can manipulate with it. So who knows?
Maybe it'll escape.
Yeah.
Do you ever watch Walking Dead? Do you ever watch the zombie stuff?
I watched it. Yeah. Honestly, a lot of that stuff I haven't watched since I had kids. I don't have time, and then it's not something that I want to have on TV. I mean, I don't have cable anymore, so don't really watch. I watch, kind of some news maybe once or twice a week. Other than that, that's pretty much it.
I just want to see if it's really like The Walking Dead. So I just want them to release the virus to a couple people. You know what I mean?
But then that's how in those shows it always gets out. It never gets out to just a couple people.
No, I know, but here's what we've learned with The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
With zombies, first of all, they can't run.
Right.
And even if they could run, what you do is you just knock them over. You kind of like chop block them
or shoot them.
Yeah, no, that doesn't fix it either.
Chop their head off.
You chop their head off, right? But still, let's say you don't. Let's say you're kind of get a soft heart for zombies, right? And you don't want anything to happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it hasn't already.
All right.
So what makes you a zombie from a zombie? Boy, we have really gone off from work. If they bite you,
right.
So if you get the zombie bite, right? So what do? You break their jaw off.
So you're really into the whole Walking Dead.
So you
see where they've chained them up and they're useful. And, it's a correlation to modern society where a lot of people are zombies just following.
Yeah. So you chop them off, right? Then you chain them together. Now they're helpful. Right.
That's
and if you're really concerned about them chasing you, well, you say you chop block them, you tie their shoes together.
There you go.
They're not going.
You got to figure it out.
Yeah. So we got to bring on the zombie apocalypse. We're ready.
Just for a couple people.
And you know what, Mike? You're welcome. Okay, because let me tell you something. When this happens, you're gonna say, you know what? We were talking mortgages one day, and then somehow we got on the subject of zombies. Thank you, Mike.
Saved my life. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm telling you, just take their jaw right off. So how is this going to affect real estate agents? Because I'm assuming they're the ones that made the boatload of the money over the last couple of years.
Well, we're an economy that is really, and that started after World War II with the expansion of the baby boomers and everything.
Yeah.
We've over the last 50, 60, 70 years, our economy runs on housing and real estate. So, one house that's built or one house that's sold and what's generated from the person that buys and sells that, and the other things that people need to maintain it, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, all the different stuff. I mean, there's figures that the government, I don't have them, specifically, but there's figures like how much GDP is generated from the sale of a house. So there's a lot of people that were involved in it that benefit from a good market. Banks and mortgage lenders benefit from lending the money, loan officers, realtors. And
I never thought about it, as far as like the electricians and plumbers and how they're affected as well.
Oh yeah.
And that whole, I just think, okay, to me, being more than a novice, you got the person that's going to write that mortgage for you, and then you got a real estate agent if you're using it, and then
the insurance company insuring it.
Yeah, and
the
an
town
attorney
collecting the taxes.
Oh yeah, that's the
lovely towns that collect the tax money. You know what I mean? So we don't see it as much around here with the large amount of growth that's generated from housing, because I mean, there's been people here for hundreds of years. So
you're talking about just like in Eastern Connecticut?
Yeah, just like in Eastern Connecticut.
Okay.
I mean, housing to me is always something that is, you see it in the headlines, greatest in the last couple of weeks, the greatest drop since World War II of house values. Well, that's not true for us in Southeastern Connecticut, Southern Rhode Island, the tri-state area, Connecticut, Mass, Rhode Island, however you want to look at it. So it's why working with somebody local, you have to kind of be able to speak with somebody, because what's going on here in Southeastern Connecticut or the 95 corridor, or however you want to look at Connecticut in general versus other parts, is different, because what we actually do for housing around here in terms of what we build, we don't build much compared to, we might do a subdivision around here and it might be 10, 15, 20 houses, But the zoning laws and the restrictions that these towns have put on make it very difficult to build in these towns now. Whereas you go down south, you go out west, it's not unheard of to see a subdivision that has 1,000 houses, 1,500 houses. That's generating a lot. There's material costs that have to be bought. There's labor that goes into it. And this is new construction. This isn't renovations or, fixing up an old house or things like that. So
now new construction kind of dropped, did it not, over the last 2 years because of the price of the materials? Is that what rose, or what created the buyer's market? Or I should say the seller's market, because people weren't building as much because 2x4s were through the roof.
About 50% of my business in the last 2.5 years, most of when I was at Eastern, was construction and renovation. I did a lot, and I still do,
commercial or residential? Or
residential, single family houses. Okay. And I think what drove, in my estimate from what I saw, what was driving a lot of that is the pandemic was pushing people that traditionally had to live in cities. Some people want to live in cities, but a lot of people live there because they had to commute every day. So the pandemic, because of working remotely, allowed those people to say, hey, I only have to go into the office once a month. So I don't want to live in Manhattan, or I don't want to live in Boston.
Right.
I can take the train in once a month. Yeah, it's a long day. And I'd rather raise my kids in North Stonington or Voluntown or New Haven County or Hartford County. So you started seeing an influx of those people moving out of the city into the suburbs again. And Connecticut was traditionally losing population for many years because it's an expensive, as you know, and I know, it's an expensive state to live in.
It is.
And so the new construction didn't really have to keep it. There's always going to be people building. There's always going to be people buying, whether the rates are 1% or 10%, because people need a place to live. But there wasn't a huge need for it. Once people stopped leaving Connecticut because they could work here remotely and get a job in California or Florida or Texas and make a good income that they could afford in Connecticut, but didn't have to live in that other state, or were moving out of the cities back into the suburbs, single family housing construction stepped up dramatically. And really around here, what kind of hinders it is the actual process that, the state and local governments have on zoning, on building codes. I mean, I'm going through it right now. I'm building my own house. I'm general contracting it, and it's eye-opening, like what really goes in.
I bet.
From start to finish. And if you're not working with the right people, it can be a very difficult process. It can take longer. It's expensive. So it's not easy.
Victoria comments. Just want to read this to you. And if you can comment, or I'm sure you could, but I don't know. The only good thing that came out of the pandemic for us, we refinanced at 2.5, didn't take any equity out, lowered our payment by $400 a month, which covers our taxes.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that right there is going to be the type of situation that I think can have an effect on the real estate market moving forward. Because if somebody like Victoria refinanced her house at 2.5%, and maybe, everybody's situation is different, but maybe they were married and they didn't have any kids, and now a year or two later they have kids. Are they likely to sell that house at 2.5%?
No.
And go get a mortgage at 6.5 or 7? So you have those higher rates not only affecting people that are just going from renting to buying, but looking at it from people that are already in a house that have a lower interest rate, that maybe they're not going to list their house and sell it. They're going to hold on to it and maybe stay where they are and just do a renovation on their house. So all of that leads into what we're seeing right now, which in my conversations with real estate agents and what I follow in the markets and stuff, is inventory is still pretty scarce. I think people thought the inventory was going to be more than what it was. So
what about the rental market? It seems like the rental market is still very slim as well.
And expensive.
Yeah. And I'm assuming one has got to do with the other.
Yeah. I mean,
tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, I'm just kind of spitballing there. And,
No, you're right. When it comes to rental, that's another one of those situations when people say, is it a good time to buy? Right? Now is now a good time. Well, If you have a 2.5% interest rate, selling that house and buying something else, maybe not. If you're a family or a single person, if your rent is more expensive than what you can buy something for, depending on what your
Which was
plan
our
is.
situation, right?
Yeah. You know, if you get stationed up here with the military and you're here for a year or two, maybe it's not a great time to buy because who knows where the market's going to be in 2 years. If you think you're going to be here for a certain number of years and you're paying $1,800 a month to rent a 2-bedroom apartment and you can find reasonable housing and buy something and be equal to or less than that, then you're going to buy. It's why most of what I'm seeing right now is first-time home buyers. Again, there's that's a majority of the people that I've been working with and still doing, a fair amount of construction, renovation.
I have a friend that like actually reached out to me yesterday, and she's looking for her son for a 2-bedroom, an apartment in Griswold and Jewett City. I know a few people like here down, at Paragon. Matt Lizzie, does a lot of management, for different associations and stuff. And I asked him, I said, "You have anything?" And nope. Said they have something in Ledyard. And I said, "No." I said, "They got to stay in Griswold and Jewett City." Talked to a couple other people. Nope.
Yeah.
Just nothing. Now but the houses seem like they're still getting sucked up really quick.
Yeah.
It's like, are they still going way over asking? Because there was a time where I remember when we were looking at it, we looked at a house. It was on 138. It was over by the Island Packy area. And I think Tina Luft had the listing. And Melissa was like, "Oh, that's a beautiful house." And I'm like, "Yeah, that is really, really nice." And I think the list price for it was $220. It sold for $300,000.
Yeah.
Is that still going on now, or is that kind of like the overbidding, or is that kind of going down a little bit?
I've seen that subside a lot. What was happening before is you could kind of put a house on the market. You'd have 15 or 20 people that would drive the price up, and you'd the ending offer would be substantially higher. I'm starting to see, again, seasoned real estate agents that have been in it, that understand the market and things like that. What I'm starting to see them do is price it accurately to the market. And you might get a little bit of a small bidding war, might be a little over asking, or it might be at the asking price, but they're not generating, because you're not having 15 or 20 people looking at a house, but you're still having good traffic on a lot of these properties because there is such low inventory. We couldn't sustain what we had before because there wasn't enough inventory. So now, although there's less buyers, there's still not enough inventory. But I'm starting to see, and I don't see it as much, from things that get listed, because that generally is before a person comes to me. But I've seen recently where I've had 2 or 3 VA loans in the last few weeks where the appraisals have come under the actual purchase and sale contract by not, not hundreds of thousands of dollars or anything, but 10, 15, 20 grand.
And they got to make that up in cash, right? If
or the sellers have to drop the price to meet it if the borrower doesn't have enough to make up the difference. So you're starting to see the market's figuring itself out. I've always been one of those people that says, the market is what dictates and determines the sale price of a house. So you're seeing where those values that were higher are starting to, come back to reality. It couldn't continue on the way it was for the last couple of years.
I didn't know how it was substantiating.
We would have had a bubble.
I did. What do you mean a bubble? Can you explain that?
Like last time, where it like a bubble, like where it crashed.
Oh,
where,
okay.
Everything was just
the
going.
Fed crash, you mean you're talking about?
No, the housing market crash. You know what I mean? You can't sustain, for certain people that are maybe making money on it. It's why, people always not have an ear of suspicion or something like that. But if somebody's in my business or a real estate agent, we're making money off of that transaction. Yeah. So a borrower has to look at it and say, well, how much am I willing to go up? How much is the market willing to go up? And it can't go up forever. It's just like the economy. The economy has ups and downs. The housing market, values, they go up, they go down. They can't go up forever. It would be great, but it would defy the laws of economics.
Yeah.
So
So if anybody in the chat room has any questions for Michael Mish, put it in there. We'll certainly go ahead and relay it to him and see what he can do with that. As far as well, let's kind of like branch out past, just like southern New East, Connecticut. There are to what one of the things that you had said is that a lot of people are moving from the cities, into the suburbs or more residential areas because they can continue to work. They can work from home and maybe travel in maybe once a month or twice a month or whatever to do their job. Do you think, or do you find that continuing, number one, because people are like, hey, why wouldn't we want to live in the country, as opposed to a big city? And number two is, what is that going to do to the values of the homes in, say, like the bigger cities like New York or Hartford, or which Hartford's not huge, or Boston or Providence? You see what I mean? It's like people are going to come away from that. So now those folks they're going to have to attract somebody somehow, but people are going away.
Yeah.
So when you have these large buildings and they don't, people don't need those large buildings anymore, what happens?
Well, I think in some of those larger cities, especially the cost of living in those areas in some ways negates some people that do want to live in those cities because of the cost. So if you lessen goes back to what we were saying in other segments, if you lessen the demand and you increase the supply, that's going to help prices come down. So rent prices could come down. I've heard from people in commercial real estate and things that some of these, as these commercial spaces in the cities are no longer useful. You have a company that used to employ 5,000 people in Manhattan that says, hey, we've got a whole skyscraper that we don't need anymore. Do people go in and buy a building like that, retrofit it, and turn it into more housing for residential? So you increase the number of units.
Or they just survive because they need that income every month. They're not getting it from the business sector.
Yeah, and the market will dictate in those areas, what is needed for housing, what is needed for commercial space. It's why it's so hard to look at something on a national basis. We live in such a big country, and everybody always wants to paint a picture of, well, this is the housing market now, or this is what, what's happening here or countrywide. And it's like, well, what happens in Connecticut is different than Florida. You have a different demographic. You have a different, economy. And it's so hard to just paint it with a broad stroke and say, well, this is what it's going to be. What's going to be different for California, for Florida? The only nice thing that coming out of the pandemic is that ability for people to choose and not be stuck. Like, 50, 60 years ago or 100 years ago in this area, you probably worked in a factory. You couldn't live wherever you wanted. You had to work in the factory every day. Now, technology and some different things allow you to kind of work wherever you want.
Right.
Not everybody can do that, but it allows people to move around more and kind of, set up roots where they want, not where they have to.
Well, it's funny because like at the beginning of the pandemic, it's like people started working at home because of necessity, because the government said, and the health departments, said, you got to work at home, got to stay away from everybody.
Yeah.
You there, you over there, whatever.
Yep.
So now what's happening to these buildings? Well, they're emptying out. I get concerned, and you said it. You said exactly where I thought I think this is going to go. Is that like Hartford, for example, insurance capital of maybe New England, maybe even
Used to be
the United
insurance
States.
capital of the world.
Yeah. So there are a lot of still insurance companies there, but a lot of these people now are working from home.
You ever go through Hartford?
Huh?
Would you ever drive through Hartford in some of those areas?
No.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to live in some of those spots. You know what I mean? They're rough areas.
Yes. And Hartford is, matter of fact, though, the homicide rate.
Oh yeah,
has doubled.
Yeah,
in the last 2-3 years in Hartford. They've hit a new personal best. I mean, it's just awful up there.
And I mean, you always hear politicians in these states, talk about revitalization. in these areas that were, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s were booming. My grandmother will still talk about the heyday of downtown Norwich. And
Woolworth.
Yeah, exactly. My
Reviews.
mom can, says when she was a kid, they would go down there, they would get dressed up in like gloves and hats and dresses, and it was a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was the heyday of Detroit, those big urban areas that kind of everybody gravitated towards because there wasn't anything outside of that. That's where you had to go. Now you have, department stores and retail chains spread out everywhere.
Yeah.
So the focus isn't on that. So the revitalization, although it's always seems to be like a political hot button and people want to revitalize those areas and take money to revamp it, the market comes in and the market really determines like if people want to be in those areas. Like look at Detroit. There's huge tracts of land with tons of space that used to be single family houses on all the outskirts.
And nothing.
But nobody wants to live there. So doesn't matter what you do to the area. If nobody's interested in living there, you're not going to bring people in.
Well, I kind of wonder. I mean, this is the way I kind of envision it, and it's really weird. But it's like, let's say the Travelers building is up, they're done. Everybody's working from home. They don't need that building anymore. They've outsourced to different places, maybe even smaller places in more residential areas, or whatever. Travelers Express call their small offices. Now you got this huge building. You said exactly where I think they might go with it, and that's retrofit it, for like stacked housing.
Yeah.
And all I can envision is this post-apocalyptic kind of scenario. You have all these people that have moved into the inner city because it may be the only affordable housing, and we know what that, unfortunately, right? With people outside, garbage cans with fires trying to stay warm and stuff like that.
New York City used to be.
Like New York City, exactly. Yeah. I kind of wonder if that's going to happen to a lot of the big cities. If this continues, when people want to, move into like an Eastern Connecticut, just a small, quaint little area.
Yeah.
And people can be just as effective and productive from their living room couch as they can from, going into their office and Marcy bringing them a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Or in those areas, do those large buildings, those large tracts of land spaces in those cities that used to have these massive buildings.
Yeah.
Does the values get low enough to the point where it makes it for a developer that can come in there and buy entire block areas of a urban area, tear everything down and build up the type of housing that is more what would interest somebody in that area? Maybe they don't want to live in a high rise, but maybe they want to be in an area where everything they need is within walking distance. Like I have a friend of my fiance that lives up in New Hampshire, and they built, I don't know what was there before, but probably at least 2 to 3 times the size of the area around the Crystal Mall. And it's all single family homes, like planned units where they're kind of like cookie cutter with townhouses. And in the center of it, there is, I don't know the name of the Hannaford's up there, which is a grocery store chain.
Yep.
There's a grocery store. I think there might be like a Target. There's a Starbucks, a couple restaurants, and you have people living in essentially single family housing and condo style, but all centered around that kind of mix of retail, mixed use. And I've always said, I think that would be the way that you'll probably see something like a Crystal Mall go. Like I could see Crystal Mall being a whole bunch of condos with, a grocery store. You got Target within walking distance. You got the shops across the street. They could do a walk over the road so people don't have to cross 85 there.
Yep.
And whether it's a 55 and older or some type of assisted living type, whatever it is, that because it's already cleared land and you'd be able to do something much more useful for the community, plus the tax base of it, of all those single family properties and stuff, versus a mall that nobody goes to.
It's funny because I had heard that the plan was to retrofit it where the bottom level would be retail.
Yep.
The upper level, which is closer to ground level anyway, is going to be or they want to make it into assisted living.
Yeah.
Like a 55, like a 55 and older, almost like a gated community.
Yeah.
With, like you said, retail and stuff like that. I think that's, a great idea. I mean, strip malls are actually the way people are seeing to shop if they're not shopping online.
Yeah.
They're not going through the walk through the mall. Even Tanger Outlets is having a rough day.
Crystal Mall, I mean, think of it. Even if you did that, if you did some type of a mixed use, how much they have in the way of parking there that could be additional units. I mean, if you have an assisted living or something like that and everything's there, the draw is that maybe you don't need a car. You don't need a car payment because you have public transportation to get around, and everything you need is within walking distance. So then you don't need, 5,000 parking spots.
Imagine the people coming in from the inner cities at that point.
Yeah.
See, now I know people that are working from their homes, because they can.
Yeah.
And not so much because the pandemic and the government said so. So that makes these types of housing developments, I mean, very, very cool to live in.
It'll be interesting. I mean, it's,
Are we looking at a metamorphosis, in the housing market? Are we looking at a bunch of change right now?
I think, I think before COVID, we had started getting to the point where we were at a precipice and a generational change in the way that everyday Americans live their lives.
Yeah.
The technology that we used since COVID happened was there. And a lot of companies were looking at, the correlation of people working outside of the office, how much that saves a company, how that affects productivity. But everybody was kind of afraid to implement it, even though the technology was starting to be there. And COVID kind of pushed everybody off the cliff with that, no pun intended, that they had to do it. So now you have Zoom conferencing, you have all these things. And yes, maybe they lose a slight amount of productivity from a worker because maybe that person that's working at home, is doing a load of laundry here or there, but they're happier. So you have a better work-life balance. And how much does it save from a company that, I did a lot of loans during that time for people moving into where people from Indiana, Illinois, Massachusetts that were like, hey, my company went 100% virtual. We no longer have a space. We travel to wherever we're working and we work remotely.
Yeah.
And so that company got rid of the cost of having a space, and their workers are happier. You know what I mean? So that kind of changed the work-life balance. So it's interesting to see. I mean, you can predict it or think how it's going to change, but
I can't work from home. I'm not disciplined.
I can if my kids aren't around.
I can't do it at all. I mean, it's like when it started and the edict came down where we said, no, you got to stay home. And I'm like, all right, well, this could be cool. So I get up, I'd start doing my thing, from the kitchen table. And I'm like, oh, you know what? That show's on that I missed last night. I'm going to watch that.
Yeah. I could see if you're a TV watcher, that working from home would be tough.
Well, no, I only watch like a couple of shows.
Yeah.
But you know what happens? You fall down that
rabbit hole.
That rabbit hole. And next thing you know, it's like, oh, well, that's a funny TikTok video. And you keep going and you go, next thing you know, you've been scrolling up for 6 hours.
So you got to stay off TikTok.
Yeah.
Chinese government has your entire
everything.
Yeah.
It's just it's a scary thing. I don't think that a lot of companies need those big buildings anymore, and I think it's going to turn in. I think we need housing more than we do those large buildings. Why not do something for like our veterans?
Yeah,
and
we need housing. We need revamped, newer housing. Things that are more energy efficient. You see it. And I think with like new construction, you see a lot of those energy efficiencies going away. I'm not one of those people that's a proponent that, let's go 100% green and get rid of all fossil fuels tomorrow because it's unrealistic. But making your house more energy efficient and having some ways to save on that. When a lot of these houses were built, people were heating their house with, coal stove or oil was cheap and, it didn't matter if the windows were drafty or whatever. You dealt with it, or you had a wood stove and you were burning wood. Now things are changing. I mean, I'm trying to be as energy efficient as I can because of the cost of it. So I think that's a big, that's going to be big for the future of where housing is going, because some of this houses don't last forever. People say, I'm going to build my house, 100 years maybe. And you have housing in some of these areas, if they haven't been updated, the mill houses like where I grew up in Baltic, or mill houses around here.
Sure.
They're at the end of their useful life. So you're going to start to see where people buy them, fix them, renovate them.
That happens on Carly Avenue.
Yeah.
In Jewett City.
Yeah.
Hill Street.
Yeah.
They're doing the same things. Here's a comment, not so much a question, but I don't know if I'm sure you could comment on it, but I don't know where. I think we may have beaten this up, but we'll see. The problem with the influx of city dwellers is that they expect the services and conveniences that they had in the city. It would change, or it will change, the landscape of our smaller towns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, that kind of segues a little bit into people talking about, how you look at, say, politics. People going from blue states moving to red states to change the politics in those. You know what I mean? Same idea.
Yeah.
If you're moving out to somewhere, or you're moving somewhere different, you can't necessarily expect that where you're moving to is going to change because you want it to. That's like, to me, almost like a very bratty thing to, you move from the city and you expect the stuff out here. I'm one of those people that, believes more in like self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You should be able to take care of yourself. Obviously, we want to help anybody that can't, but it's probably why I live on I bought a large chunk of land and I want to be out in the woods, and I kind of want to be away from everything.
Because everything's too people-y?
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, I joke around. I'm an introverted extrovert.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
I get it. Yeah.
Like I'm comfortable around people. I like being around people, but and obviously my business requires me to be interacting with people. But I definitely can see where, being out, like people that get out in nature and do those things, it's addicting, having some
I get
solitude.
it, because with me, like, I think because of what I do, people expect that I'm just like this extrovert.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just, jump in the middle of the circle and start doing the Macarena in front of everybody. And I'm like, no, like for example, I stopped doing, I guess you could say I've retired from the entire portable DJ thing, weddings and parties and stuff like that and everything. I always said that once it became a job, I was done, and it became a job. So I was done. I still do other things, but when I can remember for 30 years, Michael, I would go ahead and I would, just before I would start a wedding, like reception that I would be doing, no matter how long I've been doing it, I was sweating like crazy because I was nervous.
Anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because something was going to screw up. A speaker was going to short out. A microphone's not going to work. They're not going to like the music I'm playing. They're going to sit there and just stare at me, from their seats, but they're not going to say anything. I mean, just anything that could go wrong will go wrong. That's what I was thinking, so. And, about half hour into it, I'd get into my groove and everything would be fine. I can't do that. I just think, no, screw that. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't even like going to Walmart. I don't like, I mean, I like
haven't stepped
people.
foot in a Walmart in years.
I mean, going to Walmart, right? We need paper towels and toilet paper. Boom, I'm in, I'm out. I can't shop. Even Melissa will look at me and she'll go, "You okay?" Because I'll start getting the shakes because I feel like I'm getting closed in. So I kind of like this working by myself thing. I mean, that's kind of, but I kind of wonder if the pandemic has perpetuated that.
It's allowed it. It's allowed people that, didn't want to have to be in that setting for whatever different reason. It allowed people to have an outlet where maybe before they had to because it was their only job opportunity. Yeah. Well, now they're not entitled. They're not required to find a job in their geographical area. They can find one anywhere, in the United States, depending on what they do, obviously. So it's. I mean, I have the office even when I was at Eastern, I went into the office more, but it's just kind of the natural change in the business that I don't go into the office a lot because of the fact the way I run my business. I'm available from when we work together, and I'm available 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So
you always return my text or call or whatever.
Always return texts, always return calls. Sometimes it drives my family and my fiance crazy because it could be 8 o'clock on a Saturday or whatever it is. But
I'm like, I'll just ask Mike.
Yeah. And how I balance that is, okay, if I'm going to be available 7 days a week and I am, on the phone a lot throughout the day, I balance that out by saying, look, I'm not going to be in the office from 9 to 5, because if I was in the office from 9 to 5 and then doing all those things after that, I'd be working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then there's no work-life balance. My kids are starting to get to the age, my son will be like, Daddy, you're always on the phone. It's like, I know.
Well, it's funny because the whole reason why I moved into this is, number one, I felt that there was a need. And number two, work-life balance. That was the most important thing. Not even pay.
Right.
Not even pay. It's like I had working for Verizon Wireless. I had no work-life balance. Just even Melissa with her job. I mean, her boss had the audacity to say to her the other day, "The building comes before your life." And I'm like, what? No, sport. It does not.
Right. Yeah.
It does not. You go to your job. You punch in. You do a great job.
Work hard.
Work hard.
Yeah.
Have a good day. See you tomorrow.
Right.
No.
Right.
And I don't know. This right here allows me that. Like when like I said, my daughter's 15, right?
Yeah.
So when I started doing this, she was 7, and I have never missed a soccer game.
Yeah.
I've never missed a play, concert performance, anything. Whereas back when my first daughter was going through school in high school, to get a day off or an evening off just to go see, it was like an act of God. And I couldn't get it,
right.
And
as you get older, those things that, like, people that as you're growing up that are older than you tell you these corny things when you're in your teens and 20s, and money's not as important as time, and you never get these years back with your children.
You don't.
Work life, and you don't. And then I'm in the situation now where it's like, wow, it's really true. It's the journey of going through life and seeing them grow up, and that's far more important to me, to have that work-life balance nowadays, than to be able to say, well, I got to work all year and miss all this stuff, but I'll buy them $5,000 worth of Christmas gifts. So
Daryl from the Healthy Computer on School Street, Jewett City, selfless plug. I love working by myself. He says my standards are always met. He has low standards, and I'm always accountable for what happens. So he has incredibly low standards. So he knows viruses at computers. So, well, Mike, I think we kind of beat it up a little bit, but I think that's awesome. Thanks for coming in, especially on short notice.
No, I appreciate it.
Talk about being on the phone real quick. Boom, we're there.
I do what I can. I appreciate you having me in, and always look to share some information.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think we all learned a little bit of something, about the mortgage industry, where, it might be going, from somebody that's been doing it almost 20 years. So.
Yeah. It'll all work out. Everything will be okay.
I say it all the time. I say it, the world has a funny way of working itself out.
Yeah.
It just does.
Yeah. And honestly, to me, as you get older, I've realized that the less I try to, wrestle it to the ground and just kind of have faith in have faith in it's all going to work out. It really tends to.
It just all works itself out.
As long as you get out of the way. Get out of the way.
She'll be like stressed out on the couch, and then she'll be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe." And I look at her and I'll say, "You can't control it right now. There's nothing you can do. Just let it go.
Just got to be grateful."
Yeah.
Every day.
I said, and I say this to her all the time. I said, isn't it weird how everything always just kind of works itself out? And finally now she says to me, yeah, that's true. At the beginning, first, she thought I was like on some sort of street-wide pharmaceutical.
God has a plan, and it always works out better than you can imagine.
Yeah, just believe.
That's all right.
Just believe. That's all you got to do. Michael, thank you very much, man.
All right, have a great day.
You too. All right, Michael Mish from Norcom Mortgage. Yeah, don't forget your keys, bro. Norcom Mortgage. He actually helped us out personally with our mortgage needs when we got our house, and we just made our first mortgage payment last week, 2 weeks early too. I like that. So anyway, tomorrow we will be back once again with Paul Ash and Chris Goodenough. It's Retiree Row and Ask Chris Anything on a Friday. But there's a story I wanted to tell for the people that are still here that kind of it kind of affected me a little bit. It was up in the Plainville area, and I was like, wrestling with the fact I want to get a coffee for the ride home. Oh yeah, and it usually always wins that when I say I want a coffee, I'm going to stop and get one somewhere. So I stopped in at a Dunkin' Donuts at a gas station, and I walked to the back, and it was a gas station, Dunkin' Donuts, right? And they had this really, really cool, like brick. It was cardboard, but it was all across the counter, and in the middle of the counter, it came up with one like fireplace. It looked really neat, and I'm standing there and looking at it. They had different decorations on it and ribbons, and I'm sitting there going, "Wow, this is pretty cool." So I came up to the counter, and the kid, who was there, we started, chatting a little bit, and he was a high school kid, working there he's a senior at high school, in his high school. So I said to him, I said, "Man, you did a really good job with this stuff." He goes, "I didn't do it." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, that was the manager that did that. Put that all together." And I said, "Oh, okay. So you did a great job, dude." And he goes, "No, I just told you I didn't have anything to do with it." And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, but you did." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You work the night shift, right?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, and your manager, comes in and opens in the morning, I'm assuming? Yeah. So what happens if you don't do all of your work? Let's say you tell your manager, "I got to get home. I got a test tomorrow. I can't stay and do this." What do you think happens? Well, that work still has to get done. So your manager has to come in and do that. What happens there? I looked at him and I said, that takes up the time that your store manager could have put up that display. So you may not have put these decorations up. You may not. I pointed to a ribbon. I said, this ribbon may not have been put up by you. I said, but it was your work and what you do that allowed somebody else the time to make this look great. I said, so you did a great job. And he stopped and he goes, it's really all about a team, isn't it? I said, yeah. I said, I guess so. I said, so just don't sell yourself short. I said, just when you don't think that you didn't have an impact on something, you actually very much did. And I left the kid and he was very happy. And I think I made his day and he made my day too, that he just smiled when I walked out the door. So take that with you today. No matter what you do, impact somebody's day. And it could be in a very positive way. And you don't even realize what's going to happen the next day when you don't see that person, because what you did the previous day could certainly be the key to what happens to them. So have a good day, everyone. Chris and Paul tomorrow morning right here on SNSN.
Life is full of choices. At Jewett City Savings Bank, we can make one choice easy, finding the right checking account. We offer a range of affordable accounts to fit your budget and needs, and each gives you the freedom to access your money the way you want, online, through our mobile app,